Hey guys, how are we? Well, we're right up the top here. So we're on the 21st floor. So you can see all the way through to Pattaya, and I think that's Kori, something or other island in the background, and then you see Jomtien in the background down there. So yeah, interesting time. So bear with me with this video. I will attempt to get through everything. There's a lot to talk about. Yeah, it's just not easy to, cover everything. And I can see from the stats that most people actually watch everything, but some people sort of lose interest probably 10 minutes in. So if you can, try and bear with me, and I will try and cover everything and explain things that probably seemed a little bit cryptic on the previous video. But yeah, so okay, so the situation that we're looking at the moment, I'm convinced that that the market hasn't reached the bottom yet. And I didn't even look. I think the last time I looked this morning was the 10-year bond yield was 3.41, which basically, it's gone up significantly again overnight. And that's really not a good thing. That's yeah, that's something that is really, it's going to bring some instability to the markets, right? So the thing that you're going to watch now is for the equities market to sell off even further. Crypto is probably going to sell off further. I'm just trying to find some shade here, so I don't like getting burnt. But yeah, crypto is probably going to sell off even more. And I know a lot of people have said, we've reached the bottom of the sell-off with Bitcoin. It's at $22,000, and I sort of said it's still got further to go. I think today it's around 21,500 roughly, and I'm only saying very roughly. And I said yesterday that I think, when I was looking at different charts, 17,900. I have heard some pundits like Max Wright say they're expecting it to go down to 15. Even today, there's a lot of talk that it could go down to 9,000 to 12,000 US dollars per coin. And Harry Dent Jr. has basically come out and said, well, he expects it to go to $3,500 to $7,000 US per coin. Whether or not it reaches there, I don't know. But the real money's in actually predicting the bottom, right? And there's a lot of talk about it going to $500,000 to $1 million per Bitcoin in the future, in the next economic cycle. I don't know about that, but I mean, I don't know where people are calculating those figures, but Bitcoin is definitely here to stay. I know Peter Schiff has basically been saying, Bitcoin's going to go to zero, and I just don't see that. The real thing with currency needs to be fungible, transferable, divisible. Bitcoin ticks all those boxes. The other big thing is people have to have faith in it, and Bitcoin certainly is seen as a store of value, a measure of value, and so it's here to stay. It's here for the long term. Utterly convinced of that. The real thing that I'm looking at the moment is whether or not institutional investors get back in, and I think they will, because once things get really dire, people are going to look for any store of value they can get into. It's just one of those things where it's very unpredictable. It's, if you had a crystal ball, yeah, you'd make millions, but it's very, very hard to tell where things are going. So, but there's one thing that you can be pretty much assured of: we have not seen the bottom of this route yet, and it's going to continue to sell off. Utterly convinced of that. We haven't even seen the beginning of it, I'm convinced. I did see someone sort of predict that it could see an 80% sell-off from the top, and I'm talking about equities here. So a sell-off of the S&P of about 80% from its top, which would be absolutely massive. So yes, but certainly watch this space and keep an eye on it. I said in the previous video that you want to keep your powder dry, because it allows you to buy in at the bottom, and there's a big difference between buying in at, say, 22,000 US dollars to 15,000 US dollars. There's a big difference in Bitcoin in that. So if you can predict the bottom, in the long run you make or you stand a much higher chance of earning some really decent money. So yeah, so just keep that in mind. I did talk briefly yesterday. I said, look, there's a lot of expats over here that are looking at moving back to the US and Australia. And the reason why that is because here in Thailand there's a big disparity between the rich and the poor. You can see that a mile away. We went and bought some sausages off a street vendor down the road here yesterday, and he was selling street food for 10 baht, which is like 40 cents. And he works all day at that, and what's he probably going to sell? Maybe 60 sausages a day. It's not really great, you know what I mean? And the tourism sector here is significantly down. The amount of lights that are out when you look at the high rises here of a night time, there's probably 90% of the properties here are vacant. And I know we're not in the high season here, but that is very, very significant. That tells you that the occupation rate here is really, really low. And, how is that going to turn around, particularly if the rest of the world's in the middle of a financial meltdown, and you've got, units, condos sitting here, completely empty. They're not earning money. They don't cost a huge amount of money, a lot of these condos. You can buy a condo here for about 40,000 US. You're going to buy them for 40,000 and then let them sit there. They're still going to cost you $70, $80 a month. You want to be leasing those condos out there, but they're sitting there empty. The other thing is that the economy here is heavily geared towards tourism. How long does this sustain before you see absolute poverty kick in? But just some of the little mannerisms and things that you pick up here, there's certainly some degree of resentment here, and resentment from the locals towards foreigners. And I know there's some dyed-in-the-wall expats here that are never going to leave, and they absolutely swear by Thailand and the situation here. I beg to differ. That's my personal opinion. I've been in a lot of places around the world, and I think once things really start to buy in, poverty starts to get really bad. Once you have a huge disparity between the haves and the have-nots, you're going to see opportunistic crime. And I did see one of the viewers, they text me the other day. They're in Greece, and they lost some camera equipment and some other stuff from their Airbnb, and that certainly looks like opportunistic crime, and that's in Greece. And I said that before. While they were out of their unit, somebody went in, had a copy of the key, and just took what they wanted. So I think you're going to see stuff like that here as well. I mean, it's going to happen everywhere in the world, and I think that's why a lot of expats here are sort of quietly talking about heading back. On the previous video, I did say you want to be in a position where you can be supported by community, family, friends, fellow expats. If you're not in that situation, it can become very dire. You know, it's not an easy situation. And you could find yourself going from really, really bad to really, really bad here. It's anytime you're in a situation like that, I mean, even earning online is going to drop significantly once this thing really bites. So you just want to be very mindful of this sort of stuff. And I'm not wanting to be negative, but yeah, you sort of have to just call a spade and not a digging implement. So the situation in the past, and this is what I think COVID was actually about, right? So COVID was actually about, in my opinion, it was about slowing down the velocity of the M1 money supply. And what I mean by that is that the central banks in different countries around the world had printed so much money that they needed to slow transactions down, because the more transactions you have, people purchasing goods and services, the more inflation will go up if you have added a lot of money to the system. And I think that's what we're facing at the moment. You're seeing inflation all around the world, like 8 or 9% officially, but I think in a lot of places it's probably about 17, 18, 19, 20% inflation. So that's my opinion of what's happening at the moment. Now that a lot of the quarantine and mandates and all this other silly craziness has been removed, I think what you're seeing is that M1 money supply velocity go up, and then because there's so much money added to the system, it's caused inflation to go up, because you've got more and more dollars chasing assets. So people are prepared to pay more and more for the same asset or for the same goods or service. That's my opinion on what's happening at the moment, and I think the US Fed understand that. I think a lot of central banks around the world understand the situation as it is at the moment. And the only solution that I can see is more stimulus, QE1, QE2, Operation Twist, so more stimulus, but I don't think that's going to work this time. As I said in a previous video, I think all of the tools in their quiver are finished. They're ineffective. And I think what you're going to see now is the Federal Reserve basically pulling its hand off the levers, letting that 10-year Treasury yield go through the roof, which means that you're going to see equities and a lot of things just absolutely crater. And I think it's by design. I think they've decided that now is the time to just pull their hands off the levers and let things implode. And you're going to see them bring out a new international trading currency based on crypto, a new international taxation system that plugs directly into it, so a smart contract. And I think you're going to see, once this thing is over, you're going to see a lot of countries relinquish a lot of sovereignty. And the one world government as we know it is not so much a system of bureaucrats, but I think what we're seeing is a system of bankers and central bankers and World Economic Forums and Bilderbergers that are basically trying to pull the levers behind the curtain. And I think the one world government's already here. And that's my opinion of things. Good to see that the screen is not flashing, or the sky's not flashing like yesterday, actually, as a side note. So who knows what was going on yesterday. But yeah, certainly a lot of interesting things like that happening at the moment. And as I had someone email me or message me last night, which would have been afternoon their time, 3 o'clock in the morning for me, they said, "Oh, you know, what do you mean by this, this, and this?" And you know, I'm not sure that my message back was coherent, but basically, I said to them, "You want to keep cash on you," and what you're probably going to see if things get really bad is that a lot of banks will shut down the ATMs. Withdrawals, you're going to see interbank lending stop, and we saw that in the 2008 financial crisis. Once the financial system seizes, so you're going to see interbank lending seize up. So liquidity really is the oil that allows the cogs for the financial system to move. Once that liquidity dries up, you're not going to see any money being available. And that's what really concerns me. What happens on the streets when people don't have any money to buy anything? So I certainly want to keep your powder dry. You certainly want to keep some money on you. You can't eat gold and silver, put it that way. And you can't eat Bitcoin. So that's my opinion on where things are at the moment. I'm certainly wanting to keep an eye on things, you know, so just be very mindful of this sort of stuff, eh? So we're heading for really, really difficult times, and I'm not wanting to be a downer or a party pooper, but it just is what it is. You can see it. You don't need me to tell you. Look at the 10-year Treasury yield. Look at cryptocurrencies, look at the equity markets. The only thing that I'm waiting for now is a black swan event to really put the nail in the coffin, and then it will probably a financial